might have any money left to work out, but anyway.
No shot. no shot. That's a two.
Oh, are they?
No, fuck this, whatever.
Was it?
He's in.
That's time of
yeah.
night, fuck it.
150.
Well shifted.
I hate these goddamn bump pots. All in? Hey, what's going on guys? It's Danny here, and today we're going to be recapping a session that I played on December the 8th. Once again, we're playing a 1-3 no limit hold'em, but this time we had an optional $6 straddle that was on for the majority of the night. So this game is playing pretty big. It's a pretty sick sesh, so we've got a lot of interesting hands to cover, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Before we get into it, I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning into the previous vlogs. I've got quite a boost in viewership ever since doing the poker vlogs, so clearly you guys love the poker related content. That's kind of what's motivating me to play a little bit more and put some more sessions together, because usually I'm just a recreational casual player. But for you guys, I'd love to pump a few more videos out there. So keeping in mind that I am primarily a gaming streamer, but if you do like these kinds of poker related videos, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It would mean the world to me. But without further delay, let's go right into the hands. So jumping right into it, this hand is playing 1-3-6 and we find ourselves with ace-jack offsuit in the small blind. The under the gun player limps and it folds around to us, and we go ahead and make it $30 to go, and it folds back around to the under the gun player who calls. The flop comes queen 5-5 with a diamond, and we do a standard c-bet, betting $35, and our opponent calls. The turn now brings the 10 of diamonds, putting a backdoor flush draw on board and also giving us a gut shot. So at this point I'm contemplating my options here, whether or not I want to continue bluffing or not. Keeping in mind that I'm out of position here, if I'm going to be betting turn, I probably want to be following up with a big river bet as well, so I may as well make a decision at this point whether or not I'm going to commit to that line. Eventually I come to the decision that I'm just going to be bluffing it off here. It's pretty early in the session. I think our opponents can be quite hesitant to call it all off, especially with a speculative holding. Even with, you know, some top pairs, they're going to be put in some pretty dicey spots here, so I size down on the turn, betting 55, looking to maximize fold equity on the river with a big bet, and our opponent once again calls. So I've predetermined here that I'm going to be bluffing any river, but something I wasn't actually prepared for was an offsuit jack on the river, which now gives us second pair. At this point I need to make a decision whether or not I need to turn this hand into a bluff. We do have a decent amount of showdown value, but we're still losing to her most likely holding, which is, you know, top pair. That being said, this is a good card to represent ace king, as well as a variety of full houses I'm going to have on this board. We could also still jam kings and aces for value here, so I think we have more than enough value combinations to justify this bluff here. I go ahead and just rip it in for 200, and our opponent goes deep into the tank. She probably thought for about a minute or so before releasing her hand. I put this question to Instagram and most of you guys responded saying that you would probably check down here, and in hindsight, I tend to agree here. So after our opponent folded, I was paid $5 to show the hand, and then our opponent said that we had the best hand. So if we can have the best hand here, if our opponent can call with worse 2 streets, then there's probably no need to bet, but we didn't have the information at the time. In this next hand we pick up 10-7 of diamonds, and we've been battling with the guy on our right quite a fair bit. For this hand we're on the button and he's on the cutoff. He makes a super weak open to 7, and we go ahead and 3-bet him to $27. So looking to isolate this player and play in position heads up against him is the intention here. He goes ahead and makes the call, and we go to a flop that is jack 6-5 with 1 diamond. So we have both a backdoor flush draw and backdoor straight draw, but he just leads into us for full pot, and we fold this one. But we're going to be tangling with this guy quite a lot this episode, so this is only just the beginning. For this next hand we're playing 1-3-10, and we look down at ace queen of diamonds in the cutoff. The opponent on our right limps in for $10, and we isolate to 40 here. I should be sizing a lot larger than this, just knowing how call happy my opponents are, but you know, that's a mistake that I realized in hindsight. That being said, the straddler makes the cold call. He literally says, "I want to play with you," and the guy on our right also makes the call, so 3 ways to a flop. So the flop comes ace 9-4 with 3 spades, and they check to us, and we continue for $65. No resistance this time, we take it down uncontested. So every time there was a monotone board, we did a bomb pot for $10, and we did about 8 or 9 of these, and I won none of them. And this was the only one where we even had the smallest semblance of any equity. So in this hand, we're dealt king 4 of diamonds, and we flop a flush draw on one of the boards. We call a small bet and are forced to fold the turn. It's unfortunate too the flush didn't arrive because our opponent had a jack high flush in that hand, so plenty of implied odds with making a flush there, but unfortunately not to be. Maybe next time though. Bomb pots are just not for me. For this next hand, we pick up pocket 6s in early position, and there's already a limp before us. We're playing 1-3-6, and in this instance, I just choose to over-limp this hand rather than isolate. Multiple players limp behind, and the straddler checks his options, so we're going 6 ways to a flop, and that flop comes 7-7-6 with 2 hearts. So bottom full house for us on a pretty wet board. There's an abundance of straight and flush draws there, so it's a really good spot to get some action here. The straddler without hesitation leads out for $25, and for me there's a lot of implied odds in letting a straight or flush draw and hit their respective hands and just stacking them that way, so we go ahead and flat call. The turn is an offsuit 3, and the logic here is the same as it was on the flop. When the straddler leads out for 65, I go ahead and flat call. I think at this point it's pretty likely that our opponent does have a 7, but I do still think that raising is far too strong, and if he did somehow have either a straight or flush draw, I want him to draw to that and make it. The river comes down an offsuit deuce, and this hand is all but locked up. Our opponent once again continues for $200, and he may as well just flip over his card and show me at 7 at this point, because he's just always going to have a 7. That being said, we got the second nuts here. There's only 2 combos of 7-6, so we're obviously jamming. He's only got another 350 behind, so, you know, I just want to take as much time as I can. You can see in the footage that I actually go into the tank quite a fair bit. We're here following the river action before finally jamming it all in. The reason why I say our opponent pretty much has to have a 7 here, and I may still be wrong, is that I have a bit of history with my opponent. He's just a really tight profile here. If he's leading out 3 streets in a multi-way limped pot, he's just going to have a 7 the majority of the time. But to my surprise, he actually folds pretty quickly when I jam on him, so I think he must have just had some sort of weak 7 and knew that as played, I'm probably not going to be bluffing taking this line here. So we take down a healthy pot with a little bit of run good there. Next hand, we pick up ace queen of clubs and isolate our little friend here who limps once more on my right. I believe we're on the hijack and we make it $20 to go and he calls. So the flop comes jack 10-5 with 2 clubs, so we flop huge, and I am fully prepared to put my entire life savings in on this hand. As played, we get dunked into. He leads into us for 30, and I accidentally click it to 75 instead of 95, but it doesn't matter, he quickly folds, so we take this one down. Alright, let me try and paint a little bit of a picture for this next one, because it's a bit of a doozy here. So it's the tail end of the session, everyone's winding down, we're probably wrapping up in another hour or so. Another gun +1, who's a loose aggressive opponent, opens to $20, and our friend on our right, who's on the button, makes the call. We look down at pocket queens in the small blind here, so obvious squeeze spot. Sizing wise, I'm looking to size fairly big because I know both opponents have a propensity to call down light, so we want to maximize value here. I go ahead and make it $110. Then under the gun +1, in the span of about 5 seconds, like holds a full stack of green worth about 500 and just pushes it all forward. It was just so unconventional, so quick as well, I was kind of like baffled. The button folds back to me and I've got a big decision on my hands here because we're playing 1200 effective. Should we only be, 500-600 effective, I certainly would have gotten all in here, but this doesn't look good, to be honest. So keep in mind here, this pot was unstraddled, so this is a potentially 400 big blind effective jam if we were to go all in. I put this spot to my Instagram and the majority of you guys said that I shouldn't be folding here. That being said, there's plenty of live dynamics that play a factor in some of my decisions, and had any of you guys been here too, you may well have came to the same conclusion as I did, but I actually opted into the fold, and it was a correct decision. Our opponent did show us his aces nice enough of him, but had this hand have played out 2 hours earlier, there was no shot I was getting away from it. So we dodged a bullet there, and by chance or skill, we are just making all the right decisions today. But not so fast. There's plenty of time for us to still butcher a hand, and this is just one of them here. I do not like the way I played this hand. So in this hand, it's literally the same configuration, just an orbit later. So under the gun +1, opens to 20 again, and I was a little bit gun shy at this point. Usually I would have pulled the trigger when I'm looking down at jacks in the small blind as I am, but this time, after the button flats, I go ahead and flat myself. The flop comes 10-9-5 with 2 spade, and we check it over to the aggressor, who is under the gun +1, and he gives up the lead. So over to my friend on the button, and he now bets $25, and I could go either way between calling or raising here. I think that the pre-flop aggressor is almost always check folding at this point, so we don't have him to worry about. But I do want to take the initiative on subsequent streets. I do think a raise would be better here in hindsight, but in this instance I opt for a flat call. The turn is an offsuit 5, and that's a really good card for us, so it gives us an overpet of the board, and we also beat 10-9 if somehow he had that hand. We check it over to him once more, and he puts in a bet of $50, and this time now surely I should be raising. I think we're almost always going to have the best hand here. He's very likely to have just a 10 or some of the other draws that are available, and we want to make him pay for those hands, but no, 1 AM, I don't make the best decisions here. I flat call again. The river's a jack, so we make top full house, and instead of leading out, which I should do, I try and trap him again, which is a terrible decision because we're also blocking some of the straight draws he might have. He's very likely to have just a 10, and he checks it back, and he does just have a 10-6 offsuit, so unfortunately couldn't get value there, and I just actually played that hand terribly, so that's how we knew it was time to rack up shortly after. So that turned out to be the last notable hand that we played. I was into the game for 400 and we cashed out of the game for 1125. So another healthy profit, and combined with the previous results from the other vlogs, I'm up a little over 3k already. So clearly a fish on a heater at this point, but look, I would rather be lucky than good. So that's going to do it for vlog number 3. Thank you very much for tuning in, and until next time, peace.